அன்புள்ள மாணவ செல்வங்களுக்கு வணக்கம். My dear students, the faculty of Women's Christian College in Chennai and the organizers of this wonderful symposium, a sustainable future for the young generation, a very, very meaningful symposium. And I'm really glad to participate in this symposium. Unfortunately, I can't come personally and give this lecture due to a very rare kind of dysfunction of muscular system in my body. And so I can't participate, but I really be thankful to Julia Harriet, who met me in another symposium in Kodaikanal. And she thought the topic which I discussed there would be very useful for the students here in the WCC in Chennai. And so she asked me whether I could introduce those new topics to you, which I agreed. And so I'm here. So I have prepared a PowerPoint presentation, which I'm going to share it with you and explain these new concepts to you. And I hope that you are aware that we are in a very, very critical situation regarding the environment, which I'm going to explain. And I'm going to share with you my PowerPoint presentation. 1 second. Yes. So here is my PowerPoint presentation. As you could see, the topic I have given is challenging times and changing economy. Challenging times. What are the challenging times? Before we get into these challenging times, I want you to see the fact that you and me are very unique. Probably your teachers may not encourage you to say that you are very unique. Our evaluation systems often says you put you into grades, like very bad, average, and okay, so, and only very few are very good. But the reality, the biological reality is that you and me are very, very unique. Can you believe that? Now look at these fingerprints. These are fingerprints of identical twins. They look very much alike, as one could see. But nevertheless, there is this uniqueness of an individual, even among the identical twins. They take their fingerprint, then what you see is here. The fingerprints are very different. So you are unique, and I am unique, and the teacher is unique. So every one of us here is very, very unique. The other interesting thing is the humans are very unique too in the following way. For example, humans are intelligent, isn't it? So we call our species as Homo sapiens sapiens. Okay. And only humans have a culture. You don't see a lion culture or a monkey culture. It's only humans have culture. And humans have this social learning called education. Say, I'm teaching you something, you are learning. Okay. This institution is actually very human. And then the tool using capacity, the opposable thumb, what you see here, leads to all kinds of tool using, which finally ends up in this high technology, what we enjoy today. And the second thing is that's possible through communication. And the communication is through language, and language is very typically human. And we are very much aware of that we exist on planet Earth, and one day individuals may go away. And then that leads to moral sensibilities or responsibilities, and that leads to the formation of religion, etc. And so, only in humans, okay, in parallel to biological evolution, a cultural evolution occurs too. And what that also you can see here in your technological development, that how fast the technology grows. Okay. And then, of course, clothing, humans wear clothes. And then long childhood. This is a very interesting thing. Only in human species, they're up to 15, 16. Yeah, some guys even 20, 22, they still depend on their parents. And this long childhood is typical of human species. And only humans blush, the animals don't blush. And we have so many other anatomy and abilities which makes us what we are as humans. Okay. And then the control of fire. When two important things in the evolution of mankind is one is control of fire, okay, second is agriculture. Okay, these two things have really lead to the cultural evolution, what I spoke earlier. And then the reasoning, okay. This is a very important aspect of humans, like we reason out why that happened, like the very lecture of this one on the symposium is because reasoning. We do see that there's something is happening around us, and so we should be very, very careful and we reason out what other alternatives we can do. Another uniqueness is called Gaia. Gaia is a concept introduced by James Lovelock, and he considers the whole entire planet is living. So, in that sense, the entire planet is a living system. You believe that? Actually speaking, he was given the task of finding life in Mars. And while he was doing that, he discovered that the planet Earth is very living. How? For example, there are three evidences that Earth regulates itself. Other planets don't regulate themselves. It's only planet Earth that regulates itself. For example, surface temperature. Every day we receive so much of sunshine that brings in heat. But nevertheless, the surface temperature on planet Earth is more or less the same. How is it possible? That's because of the life on planet Earth. And the second interesting thing which he discovered while he was trying to find life on Mars is the atmospheric composition of planet Earth is very unique. In no other planet on the entire universe, you would say, and particularly in solar system, where you have this composition of 78% nitrogen, 50% oxygen, and then argon and trace gases. And normally these things will thought that they are all these gases, if you follow the gas law, will disappear, in other planets. Now, if you go to planet Moon, you don't see oxygen. Or you can't breathe in other planets, and because there is no oxygen. But then why do we have oxygen? That's because there is life here. Life produces oxygen, converting CO2 into oxygen. And then the ocean salinity. This is another interesting aspect. Whatever rains and whatever salt being swept from land to sea, the sea salinity remains constant. That's mainly because of the organisms living on planet Earth. So, what he says, James Lovelock, through his science, is that the Earth regulates itself, and so it is a living system. Like, for example, you as a human being, okay, regulate yourself. So when you are full, your stomach is stop eating, okay? And there is actually the homeostatic mechanisms in every one of us that actually controls one human body, the physiology. The very same way, the entire planet Earth is regulating itself. And so the planet Earth is a living system, which is a very, very important thing. And this concept is called a Gaia hypothesis. And the very interesting thing is, you look at this photo, and this photo was taken from this satellite, okay? And the background of this dark background of this cosmos. And what you see as a blue line is actually, that is our atmosphere, a very, very thin line of atmosphere, which actually maintains us, If there is no oxygen, you and me cannot live, okay? And that was created by blue-green algae and those early species. And so, and a very, very thin atmosphere we have, okay? And the people who have gone, the astronauts who have gone on space, have come out and, they were naturally overwhelmed by the beauty of planet Earth, but at the same time, they realized that this is the only place on the entire known universe that we can call as a home. Okay, so planet Earth is our only home available. Okay, and then Sandra Magnus, who spent about 4.5 months on spaceship, in satellite, and he looks at it and he says, "Yeah, from here it looks like very huge and big and in our space, but actually it is not." when we live on planet Earth, like we see, wow, it's very huge. Okay. But the fact is, this is a very, very fragile system. Okay. And the entire ecosystem and the other things are very fragile. For example, in biology, there's a thing called keystone species. If the keystone species is knocked out, your whole food chain collapses. Okay. So, nexus, the entire planet Earth relies on nexus, that is on interdependency, okay, which is very, very important. Relatively speaking, we depend on each other. One of Lovelock's discovery is life is edible. If there is no life, life cannot exist. And so life is edible. So the interconnectivity and then the interdependence, these are the two important things with which life exists on planet Earth. Okay. And then what is a spaceship Earth? And that was Buckminster Fuller, a well-known designer, engineer, poet, and a futurologist. He said that planet Earth is like a spaceship. Okay? That means it's an enclosed system. And whatever happens here needs to circulate within this planet Earth. It never goes out of this planet Earth. Okay, that's fantastic. We have been given this fantastic spaceship called Earth, but without an operating manual. We still don't know how planet Earth functions and how the ecosystem functions and how these entire complex systems function. And so without a manual, like how things go wrong. And this is the planet Earth taken from a satellite. And this is what they call a geodesic dome by Buckminster Fuller. And the Buckminster Fuller has invented so many things which would ultimately lead to an operating manual for spaceship Earth. So we need to have an operating manual which we need to generate. God never gives us actually an operating manual to correct ourselves whatever goes wrong. And so we need to generate, we need to learn through mistakes and errors. And so that is the operating manual for spaceship Earth. Okay. But this beautiful, unique system, you are unique, the planet Earth is unique, and the solar system is unique, and everything is beautifully uh, arranged in a very unique way. But this unique system is endangered now. Okay, so for 15,000 scientists some years back, including myself, even signed up and given us a warning signal to uh, the people on planet Earth that it is in a dangerous position. And why do we conclude that way? It's mainly because of population. As you know, if you if you walk on Ranganathan Street, you will see that how populated the city of Chennai is. Most cities on India is so populated, and in Bangladesh, people are riding on the train, over the train, and everywhere on the train. And so population is constantly increasing, no reduction. And because of this resource utilization, we end up in climate change, which is extremely dangerous, catastrophic. Okay, and then the deforestation, and within the human species, our life, like in the last, let's say, last 50 years, nearly 60% of biodiversity of planet Earth is wiped out. As I told you earlier, biodiversity is extremely important because it is that biodiversity which controls the entire planet Earth. Okay, the oxygen we breathe, the salinity of the seas, okay, and the whole atmospheric composition of planet Earth, everything is controlled by biota, okay, life on Earth. Okay, so if there's a mass extinction of species, that obviously leads to mass extinction of humans as well. Okay, and because of these activities, the oceans have a lot of dead zones, which will actually, or actually, as it says, dead zones where there is no life at all. And then the fresh water is very limited. As you see here now, without a bottle of water, we can't exist. And so water is no more free. It has to be purchased. It was not so when I was young. Okay. And so water, fresh water is very limited. Okay. And so because of these various factors, okay, we said that we are geoparadising our future. And so it's a very meaningful symposium that sustainable future uh, for the young generation. And so this is no false alarm actually what we have given because we are out of a sustainable path. And in 2017, Stephen Hawking announced that life on planet Earth has only a, a deadline of 100 years. So after 100 years, life is wiped out on planet Earth. And you believe that 100 years is not big, Bharati died only 100 years back, and he lives with that, isn't it? So 100 years is a very small frame of time. And he says it's mainly because, he gives a very interesting quote. Climate change is one of the great changes we face, and it's one we can prevent it if we act now. Okay, by delaying the evidence for climate change and pulling out of the Paris Climate Agreement, international act. Donald Trump is trying to compete and he wants to come back as the president, will cause avoidable environmental damage to our beautiful planet, endangering the natural world for us and our children. So this is a very important thing. So I see lots of community centers in and around Chennai and other places. But why? Why do we want to generate more population, increased population, if you don't give them a proper future? Okay. The young generation, your future has been stolen, Albert. Okay. You are left with lots of credits, like resources have been taken away. And we have lived, we have left you with a contaminated planet Earth, which you need to manage. So your future is in danger. And so, unless you understand the concepts which I'm discussing today and act now, okay, there is no real, your future is extremely bleak. Okay. And so some people say, okay, then if that is so, leave this planet Earth and go to other planets and occupy, which is not easy at all. Imagine transporting the entire planet Earth, the people on Earth to another planet. This will be the biggest the Noah's Ark project on human history. And the nearest planet, which is like Earth, is several thousand light years away from us. And so traveling itself will take years, probably one generation if one starts from here. So that is impossible almost. But instead, others say that we have a planet which can be still salvaged, okay, if we lead a sustainable living. And so United Nations have come out with what we call the Sustainable Environmental or Sustainable Development Goal, okay, which is called SDG, okay. And that is possible if we follow certain principles, okay. The Sustainable Development Goals are beautiful, and if you understand all the 17, to particularly what we say is responsible consumption and production, which I'm going to talk in the next few slides. And then climate action, we need to act on because it is no more a climate change. We are in a climate crisis. And we need to handle that. Then take care of life below water and above water on the surface, on the land. Okay. And avoid wars and all the conflicts. Okay. Carl Sagan, in one of his lectures have shown a photo taken from our planet Pluto. From Pluto, a planet Earth looks like a dot, a real dot on this cosmos. And within this small dot, we have all our conflicts, wars, religious conflicts, and all kinds of conflicts, and we'll kill each other. Okay? We need to stop. And so, like this, there are about 17 development goals. Participate in the development goals. You and me, this is very, very important. I'm going to show you that what we are talking about climate change is no joke. Okay, and I found this beautiful, beautiful dynamic graph, which probably you might not have seen. And this is going to take about 3 minutes. And you watch it, this graph is going to move. And that is very interesting. Watch it now. Okay. So what happens is that on the x-axis, they have divided the planet Earth into the equator and the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. If you see this dynamic graph moving, and that actually shows the increment in the carbon dioxide production on planet Earth, taken from measured from various centers on planet Earth. What you see here on the dots on the map of Earth is various centers they have taken measurements, and so that's what you see, this dynamic graph, the increase in the CO2 production, which is in parts per million thing. And so if you see it in the northern hemisphere countries, okay, you see the highest compared to the southern hemisphere. The reason is that most of the developed countries are in the northern hemisphere, and the southern hemisphere they still have developing countries. And so this is the northern hemisphere which produces the maximum amount of CO2. Right. So if you come to the x-axis, y-axis explained, and then you come to the other side of the graph, okay, the atmospheric CO2 production, okay, here it shows the map, where the samples are taken, over a period of time. Let's say first from 1980 to 2000 and on, okay, you are going to see the increment. The reason for this graph is to show that the CO2 production on planet Earth, okay, happened after industrial development, after the industrial revolution. And that is a man-made change. This is not a natural change, what you see here, the climate things. And so to prove that, okay, scientists have taken enormous efforts. For example, now, if you look at this graph, is now slowly trying to go from 1970 to further down on time, okay? And so from 60s, and then further beyond, and there are methods but which you can measure. See, look at this. So it's now going close to what they call the common era, and then beyond common era and in geological scale. So as you see here, the increment in the CO2 production is after human activities, especially industrial activities. Before the industrial activities, if you look at the levels of CO2 in a geological scale, which is, say, for example, in Ice Age, this is only about 185 ppm of CO2, but that has increased enormously over a period of time. And then to show you that this increment is mainly due to human activity. So this is a man-made change, what we see on planet Earth, and not a natural change, because now CO2 is also produced with this volcanoes comes and other natural activities. But this graph very, very clearly shows that this is not a natural thing. This is a man-made thing. And you look at the participants involved in this project, to generate this data. Now, this is to convince you that what we are talking about, environmental change or climate change, is not a joke, or it's not a false alarm. This is a really, really factual thing. Okay. So now we'll talk about circular economy. What is a circular economy? A circular economy depends on 4 principles. For example, reduce resource dependency, which is a very, very important concept. Okay, we depend on resources and we extravagantly utilize the resources available on planet Earth. For example, sand. Okay, whatever sand you see on the rivers, take it for building constructions, and then when the flood comes, then it's all removed. Okay, the enormous damage what you see even in Chennai when there's a flood which is going to come in next few months. Have we taken enough precautions to stop flooding in Chennai? Maybe not, because we are not prepared. Actually, there is no preparedness. Okay, in a similar way, or reduce resource dependency on planet Earth, and then minimize waste. If you look at it, I still remember when I was a graduate student at Madurai Kamaraj University, my friend used to say, "Don't waste any food," because there are millions of people going without a meal on planet Earth. Okay, So minimize waste, and we generate enormous waste. Actually, it's only the human species which generate waste. Other animals don't generate waste. It's we who generate waste, and this waste actually leads to all kinds of problems. Okay, so that leads to this reduced environmental footprint. Environmental footprint is like all kinds of waste and then CO2 production and all kinds of greenhouse gases and things like that. Okay. And then people often think that this is a concept, this is too idealistic, and it may not actually help in our economy, which is wrong actually. All green initiatives could be competitive and could generate increased income. Okay, that we are going to see how we can do that. Okay, so it is a cleaner production. Okay, using limited resources and then having a better service, an efficient service, okay, which reduces waste, okay, and collect at the end of life remanufacture. This is an interesting concept. In Denmark, a waste of a company is actually utilized as a resource, and that is being actually used as the raw material for the next production. Okay, so that's possible. And then whatever we have here, recycle, okay, reuse, okay, and reduce the resources. Okay, this is very important. And so ultimately, what we need to generate is a non-toxic, long-life, recyclable products, and that will ultimately lead to a better future with an increased income. So what you see here is the first graph with our river full of filth. Okay, that is what a product of a linear economy. Whereas if we strictly follow, okay, a circular economy, then things would be different. We'll have a cleaner environment. So circular economy depends heavily on waste management systems. Who are the stakeholders of this circular economy? Let's say, who will be the executor of this project? This is the society. We need to execute this waste management system. And who will be the educator? Non-profit NGOs, who educate the public that waste should be managed properly. Or who is going to fund it? Okay, who is the actuator? And so whoever is going to fund it will be an activator. And what is the drive behind all those things? Naturally, profit. Only when we get profit, we get involved. That's the human mindset. Okay, and so the motor behind this waste management system is actually profit. It could be an extremely profitable business. Like a monk in Taiwan said that the waste is the new golden rush for this modern man. And so don't look for gold, rush for waste. And the waste, you recycle it and regenerate and you get profit. Okay. And so who will regulate this whole thing? Naturally, it is the government which puts the regulation on this. And the people who are involved, in this development, they need to have a purpose, okay, and they should have a passion. You should really understand this whole thing, and then get involved with passion, and then you will definitely see progress happening there. And this could be at a city level as well as at the village level. This could be, say, the waste management system with circular economy approach, which is integrating the key stakeholders within the key developments, emphasizing waste segregation, which is very important. We don't segregate anything. We throw everything as one bucket. So from the sources to be merged with local wisdom or regulation. For example, local wisdom. What is the local wisdom? If you look at the agriculture, okay, we used to have an agriculture some years back, okay, before we put in all this artificial fertilizers and things. We used to have a intercrop, the wood pay, they say in Tamil. So which is protein rich, and they enrich this soil. And then whatever, once the harvest is over, we leave it to the planet Earth, on the land, and so that it could be absorbed and that we generate, recycle. So everything was, if, for example, like look at our life in the village. So we eat on a banana leaf, okay, and then throw the banana leaf. The cow eats the banana leaf and gives us the milk, and then it also gives us the dung, which could be used as a fuel as well as a beautiful resource for fertilizing the land. Okay, so everything is kind of in a beautiful circular system, which we have broken now, because we add artificial fertilizers, we add artificial pesticides and things, and so that leads to all kinds of problems. Like so. If you have read this book called One Straw Revolution, Fukushima, so I was there with him on in Matsuyama when I did my postdoc in Japan. Okay, so he has written a book called One Straw Revolution, and his idea, which actually Mr. Nammalwar in Tamil Nadu followed it, is actually kind of a recyclable. Everything should be recycled and stop waste from that. And so that is a very interesting system. And then I'm going to introduce you a new system called carbon credits. What is a carbon credit? And now if you see the trending words are like net zero emission. What is a net zero emission? Every activity what we do generates CO2. Okay, so a carbon footprint. For example, you have a supermarket or a grocery shop 500 meters from your home. Instead of walking, you take a bike and go. So that means your carbon footprint in the very beginning start increasing. Every activity what you do is ultimately equivalent or calculated of footprint, carbon footprint. Okay. So a net zero emission is that can you bring down to net zero? There are countries like Bhutan, which claims a net zero emission. They don't have big industries, they don't generate CO2s, and so every country is now trying to reduce their carbon footprint and to bring it to net zero emission. Okay, and so that must have carbon friendly policies. Okay, a government should encourage you to be a kind of net zero guy, so that you don't generate much of CO2. Okay, and the carbon tax policy. So carbon tax, yes, you are going to see that within the next decade or so. That now you see the GST and the other taxes, which every one of us actually like crying about, and we are going to have more taxes in the coming years. And one of the important things is a carbon tax. Okay, we are going to pay for how much carbon dioxide we generate through our activity. So we have to pay for that. Okay, so ultimately that's what net zero emission means. Okay, so this leads to actually a new concept called carbon offsetting. What is a carbon offsetting? It is a carbon trading mechanism that enables entities to compensate for offset greenhouse gas emission. Okay, by investing in products that reduce, avoid, or remove emissions elsewhere. It's a very interesting concept. When an entity invests in a carbon offsetting program, it receives carbon credit or offset credit, which account for the net climate benefits that one entity brings to another. What does it mean? Let's see here. So a carbon credit is like one carbon credit equivalent to 1 ton of carbon dioxide production. Let's see here an industry which generates enormous amount of CO2, okay, and that CO2 has to be reduced, and so to lead to green forest and things like that. And by doing that, you can generate money. And so, how does it work? So, for example, a carbon market is a specialized type of financial market through which carbon credits can be bought and sold. For example, I'll give you an example here. Here is an emitter A, okay, who does not follow any regulations and who may have an old technology with which he generates an excess greenhouse gases, okay, which will damage our planet Earth. Okay, so naturally the regulator will find these companies which are generating more than what is needed as a CO2 production. And so this guy has to pay a fine for his greenhouse gas production. Whereas the emitter B is very clever, very intelligent, and he knows all the regulations. And so he started following that from the very beginning. And so his carbon dioxide emission is highly reduced. And so on a normal scale, okay, the CO2, the regulatory scale, and he has One guy has an excess emission, so he's fine, and he has so much of carbon credit on his head, whereas the other guy actually, because of his reduced GHG, okay, he has enormous carbon credit in the sense like, as I told you, 1 ton of CO2 production, he has so many tons of CO2, he has reduced it. So they're all coming into a currency called carbon credit. And that he can sell it to this other guy, okay, he buys those carbon credit and show it to the regulator. Look, so okay, yeah, I produce excess GH. I'm going to reduce it. Okay, I'm going to follow your regulations. But in the meanwhile, so I buy this carbon credit from the other guy and use it. For example, this one could also think about this way. For example, if you generate a lot of CO2, but you can compensate by actually supporting schemes and other things where actually forestation, like afforestation schemes, and there are NGOs which is working hard to actually reduce this carbon production. And so by doing so, okay, ultimately, if you look at this closed system called planet Earth, you ultimately benefit, and which will be monetary, and so which will become a market by itself. For example, if you see here the numbers, what you see here are at the regulatory levels for electrical distribution utilities or natural gas suppliers or refining industry or cement industry or oil and gas production. And so if you follow these regulations and you stop with that, then you are a green industry. Whereas if you don't do, then you end up with paying fine or you need to buy carbon credits. Okay, so initially the industries did not understand this whole thing, and so there are not much of a participation. But if you look at this graph, they started involving in this carbon credit system because, after all, in an enclosed system like a planet Earth, whatever waste you produce, okay, this is going to affect all of us. It's not only so. Ultimately, the industries, the consumption and all those things will, if people stop buying, their products which generate a lot of carbon emission, then their profit will go down. And so naturally, they have to think twice before making a product which has a lot of carbon footprint. And so industrial participation has actually increased tremendously over a period of even for 1 year, 2 years. Okay. And then if you look at this graph, when it was started in 2013, this was only about 27 billion US dollar business, whereas in 2020 now, it's about more than 700 billion US dollars. This industry has been now established, and people start utilizing these principles, and so which is on the increase. Okay, so if you look at this pie chart, you would see that an enormous investment has been taken towards environmental issues by the European Union. Okay, that forms the major bulk of this investment. And then, of course, you see South Korea, Japan, and Canada, and other countries also get involved in shaping our planet Earth for a better future. For only a few more slides to uh, get it over. Okay. So if you look at this carbon credit business, for example, today it's only 1.5 billion US dollar business, whereas which is less than the gold business or the copper business. But in 2030, this is going to go 485 billion US dollar, uh, trillion US dollars. Okay, sorry, and 485 uh, billion trillion US dollars. Okay, and that will still less than the oil industry on planet Earth, but which is going to exceed in 2040. The carbon market will be 3.9 trillion US dollar business, and so which you are going to actually see, and you will get involved in the future. And there are 175 types of carbon credit could be applied actually in every industry, it's renewable energy or chemical industrial or waste disposal. And I've been proposing for a green residency, which involves, like a green residence, even your building could be carbon friendly buildings, um, and it could involve a lot of sustainable principles. Okay, and then Modi ji has introduced called the smart cities. I worked on a smart city project in Malaysia, and smart cities are very important because cities are a major waste producing thing. And so, if you reduce those waste, then enormous development could be seen. And so, a smart city is extremely important. After I coming over to India from various countries where I work, I started proposing what you call smart villages. As I told you earlier, our farmers and our elders were wise in the beginning, but they have been actually like kind of cheated by these aggressive industries by introducing artificial fertilizers and pesticides and all those things. So if you use your native intelligence, right, every village could be a smart village. Okay. And then it could be a net zero village. And so once we generate this kind of a decentralized system of self-governance, okay, that will ultimately lead to um, this carbon footprint reduction. And so what we live here is an egocentric world where the human species at the top of everything. The human species thinks he is a fallen angel. Whereas if you look at it from an ecocentric point of view, man is not a fallen angel. He is a part of a whole system, a network of biota, okay, both fauna and flora. And so an ecocentric approach is the only sustainable approach for the near future, not the egocentric. And so what we should get involved is a deep ecology, and we should get involved in deep ecology, and we should understand how the entire system works, and get involved, study more, and understand, and then be part of generating a manual for planet Earth. And so, what we need here is a human change, not a climate change. So, we need to change our attitude towards environment. What we need is a human change. And so, what I stand for, is what I stand on. This is a very, very important thing to uh, think about. Okay. And so, thank you very much for this time given to me. And I've given you my WhatsApp number. You may WhatsApp me if you have any doubts because I can't interact with you now. But I also given my email address. You can write to me, and we could interact and get involved in shaping a future for you and me. Okay, so this is a very, very important symposium. I'm very glad that you attend this symposium and listen to me carefully. And then you will be an eco warrior. Okay, you will fight for your future, and that is your birthright. Okay, so by saying that, I conclude my talk today, and thank you very much for that. And again, once again, I thank the organizers for inviting me to this conference, which is a very, very beautiful conference. Thank you very much. I'm Dr. Chennai.